All right, so I wanted to talk about Nick Fuentes, and I really just wanted to expose who I personally believe is a fraud and a grifter. And I'll start with the peak of the popularity of his show. And this occurred during the time that Trump had struck Iran's nuclear facility for dough. And at this time, Nick Fuentes' show had the most watchers that he ever had. It was like 80,000. And Nick was extremely proud because he predicted that Trump would actually missile strike the nuclear enrichment facility for dough. But it wasn't really that great of a prediction because it was all over the news that a missile strike was possibly imminent. The fighter bombers that conducted the strike, their movement was being tracked, and it seemed like the military was preparing to conduct the strike and that they were on standby waiting for Trump's orders. And at the time, the news thought that it was about a coin flip as to whether or not he would actually do it. So I'll give him credit for predicting that, yes, Trump is going to strike. This is not just posturing or a threat. But Nick also claimed that following the strike, that Iran would flood the entire Middle East with violence. They'd cause chaos everywhere, destabilize the entire region, plunge the U.S. into war with Iran, which he kept claiming is the ultimate goal of the Trump administration, and the Zionists that he claims support and keep Trump in power, that they want a full-blown war with Iran, World War II levels of fighting and combat, and that after Trump strikes the nuclear facility, they're going to overrun the Middle East, cause violence everywhere, destabilize, attack U.S. bases, and none of that happened. So he was only right about the fact that Trump would conduct the missile strike, but none of his predictions for after what would come from the missile strike came true. Yet he's proud of the fact he was able to predict the missile strike happening, but he never talks about the fact that he was wrong about literally everything else. And instead, what Iran did was they reached an agreement with the U.S. They notified the U.S. that they were going to attack a remote base with a few missiles and to have their defenses up so that nothing happens. But Iran can still claim that they retaliated and America would take no actual losses. And that's how the conflict ended. And I just want to talk about the format of the show in general. The show itself is like a Trump rally. And if you've ever listened to a Trump rally, it's 90% the same content at every single rally. He says the same things, does the same boring stories. I remember in 2016, he would always talk about the broken snake story. I don't know what he does now because I stopped paying attention. But the Trump rally is almost always the same in a given campaign year. And Nick will start the show, and the first few minutes, maybe he'll talk about what's trending on Twitter, what's trending on X, and then he reverts to the exact same script. And the format of the show is usually the bulk of the show. He'll talk about how the Zionists control everything. They control Trump. They control the country. They're undermining everyone, and they have to be stopped. Or he talks about how popular he himself, Fuentes, is, how he was able to overcome all of the censorship, and he's the best commentator and has the best vision. He knows what's going to happen, and everyone's giving him the credit he finally deserves. So the show is either two things. It's about the Zionists run the U.S. and run everything, or how great Fuentes is. So it's an extremely low effort, lazy, boring show. And despite it being so lazy and low effort, he can't even start it on time. It's supposed to start at 9 o'clock Eastern. Often he doesn't start the show until midnight or 1 a.m. And he looks like he just woke up. And I don't know what's going on with him, but it's likely that he is sleeping all day somehow. And then he crawls out of bed and goes straight to the computer and starts this extremely low effort copy and paste show. It's almost always the same thing every night because he's not capable of doing the research to make a real show talking about everything that's going on. He said almost nothing about when the ICE operations in Chicago, which is his area, the National Guard sent to Chicago. There's so many things that he could talk about. He almost never said anything about the National Guard takeover of Washington, D.C., how Trump pretty much made the mayor powerless and the mayor's police commissioner and took over the policing of the city for himself. Nothing about that. There's just no substance in the shows, no news. And what he does talk about is it's usually about other right-wing podcasters like him and how he's so much better than them and they're so wrong all the time, or they're being bought and paid for by Israel. He just causes drama. It's catty stuff. It's gossip. That's what the show is. Gossiping about other people who have shows similar to him. And that's all he's capable of discussing at length. And he also has these weird mannerisms that I notice. This just shows to me that he's a very fake and scripted person, because he'll say Iran, which is the proper pronunciation, and then in the same sentence he'll say Iran. And I feel like he's trying to appeal to his redneck listeners, that he's aware of them. He's trying to make the show in a way that they can understand too or relate to. But just really weird to me how one person keeps switching the pronunciation of Iran constantly throughout the show while discussing it. That's just really strange to me. Let's get into his backstory a little bit. I wanted to make it clear he's not from Chicago. He is not Chicago born and raised, despite what he says. He's from LaGrange Park, and this is an almost entirely white suburb, like 15 miles away from Chicago. It's a rich place, good schools, high income. He's not a tough city person. He's not from the streets. I doubt he even spent much time in Chicago growing. Maybe just going to restaurants his parents would bring him to, but he's got nothing to do with Chicago. He's not a city person. He's a suburban, sheltered kid. He's not tough. He's not a fighter. He's weak, in other words. He came from a weak upbringing, and that's why I believe he's so weak with his show and so lazy that he can't put a decent show talking about things that are actually happening and can only resort to drama about other hosts of shows like his. And the show itself, since he's always starts it so late, he has this hours of the worst rap music imaginable. And I don't think that that's what a conservative person should be broadcasting on their show. It's really bad. Just this terrible rap music. He likes rap a lot too. That's his preferred genre. He's always talking about rappers and the super chats, and I just find that really gross of him. For a conservative guy, it's not the music you should be listening to. And I believe that he only achieved this popularity because his whole strategy is attacking people who are bigger and more popular than him and who are also right-wing broadcasters. And he attacks them until they notice him, and they'll just call him out and say, this guy's crazy, he doesn't know anything. And he achieves his goal of his name being dropped by someone more popular than him, and then he also grows in popularity from that person's followers going to check him out and maybe even give him a chance and listen to see what he's about. So his whole strategy is attacking people bigger than him in hopes that they notice him and then spread his name. And he did that with Donald Trump, who he was a big Trump supporter, and now he talks about how much he hates Trump. Yet he still has all of this audio from Trump rallies and speeches before and after his show. So he's using someone that he claims to hate and be against now to give him legitimacy, give him popularity. In the entire 24 election, he was saying, do not vote for Trump. And I'm pretty sure that he was taking out billboards, or someone in his name was taking out billboards saying that Trump is not America first. Don't vote for him. Yet, when Trump was elected, the first thing he does is go on X and say, we did it again. Even though he had absolutely nothing to do with Trump being elected, because he hates Trump. He makes that very clear and tells his supporters not to vote for Trump. And he does this with Candace Owens, who he talks about every night, because Candace Owens runs a giant podcast and he wants a piece of her popularity. He wants her viewers. So he'll keep attacking her, desperate to get her attention, and try to cause... there's this thing called a reply guy, and which is someone who lurks someone's Twitter and attacks them in replies. And that's what he does with Candace Owens, too. So he's on X, and he's trying to ratio Candace Owens. But the whole purpose, the reason why he's chosen Candace Owens is because he wants Candace Owens' popularity for himself. It is the same with Tucker Carlson. He attacks Tucker Carlson, calls him a CIA agent, calls him a cuck, says that his whole persona is fake, and that he's a liar himself, but the whole goal is for Tucker Carlson to notice him. So then Tucker Carlson attacks him back. More people find out about who Nicholas Fuentes is after being a Tucker viewer, and he's hoping to convert people from Tucker to him. And he achieved his goal because Tucker put him on his podcast. He conducted an interview with him. And then Nick Fuentes' popularity goes up. So his only purpose of his show, his strategy to grow it, is to keep attacking people who are bigger and more successful than he is, to try to get his name out. And I really disagree with that approach because it shows that he's not capable of making a show talking about politics or discussing what's happening in the world. It means that his opinion is really not one that's worth paying attention to, because all he does is attack other people for their own opinions to try to get them to notice him so he can become more popular. But he doesn't contribute anything himself. He just attacks people bigger than him and he's a parasite, in other words. It's a parasitic approach to growing his user base, his viewership. And I wanted to talk about a personal thing about Nick Fuentes. Is he said that he hates the Lord of the Rings. He never saw the movies. He never read the books. But the Lord of the Rings is unique because I and many other people consider it to be the ultimate Catholic-inspired fiction ever made. And the creator, J.R.R. Tolkien, is an extremely devout Catholic man, and he made the Lord of the Rings. He incorporated many Catholic themes in it. So someone who claims to be a Catholic to the extent that Nick Fuentes says he is should find a lot in the Lord of the Rings to appreciate and to talk about. Yet he considers it nerd garbage. In other words, I see him as a normie who thinks, oh, that's for nerds, that's for geeks. Yet he says he needs action, he needs violence, he needs to see rape, like on Game of Thrones, which constantly has stuff like that. I never saw the show because I knew about how graphic it is, and that disgusts me, so I don't want to watch that. But I've read The Lord of the Rings, I've read The Hobbit. I've never seen the two Hobbit movies. I only saw the original. I don't like the Hobbit movies at all. But The Lord of the Rings are some of the greatest movies ever made. Books are some of the greatest books ever written. J.R.R. Tolkien is one of the best authors of all time. And I respect him not just as an author, but as a Catholic. And the fact that Nick Fuentes is unable to recognize that and how important The Lord of the Rings is makes me think that he's not the Catholic that he claims to be, especially if you're going to promote Game of Thrones, which there's no Christian values in there at all. It's slop. So this guy, he doesn't read. He watches normie TV shows. He listens to rap. This isn't a conservative. And I do believe he is gay. And he also weaponizes being gay as a strategy to get people to talk about him. Just like how he attacks Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens so that people talk about him and notice him and he gets more popular. I believe he intentionally tries to get people to speculate about him being gay because he enjoys the drama and he enjoys the attention. And he'll say things on purpose so that it goes viral about how gay he is. And I think this is another tactic of his. I call it gay baiting. And what he'll do is, so if a super chat asks him, what's your favorite movie? I've heard him. He says La La Land. And he talks about how he loves musicals. It's the best movie. And another super chatter once asked him, what's your favorite military branch? And he said the Navy. I think the Navy is really cool in itself, but it does have the reputation of being associated with homosexuality, more so than any other military branch. And he knows what he's doing in saying that the Navy is his favorite branch of the military. La La Land is his favorite movie. And another thing that recently, it's old, but it recently trended again on X, is that he talked about how what he liked in Evangelion was the relationship between Shinji and Kaworu, and how that was the coolest part of the show. And obviously that's a gay-coded observation to make about the show. So he wants people to talk about how he's secretly gay. It's a tactic for him to get more attention. And at the same time, despite wanting people to talk about him being gay, he also wants people to he wants people to think that he has a crush on Candace Owens and that Candace Owens secretly admires him and is in love with him and that there's something going on between him and Candace Owens. And I think that as an introverted, weak, suburban kid, he probably watched a lot of anime and was involved in online anime discussion. And a lot of people who can't appreciate anime for anything else other than doing something called shipping, which means that they care about which character has a relationship with which character. So a lot of the times with a shonen like Naruto, it's about what girl is Naruto going to end up with. And you have people who take sides like a sport team. And you have Team Sakura on one side and Team Hinata on the other side. And that's something that I believe he was really into. And he's trying to apply it to himself. Like he's an anime character. And that he wants people to ship him with Candace. Because a lot of these weird online kids, teens, are into that shipping anime characters, and he wants to try to utilize that so they ship him with Candace, which I find really creepy, but I'm almost certain that's what's going on. And that's why he keeps giving, that's another reason why he keeps giving so much attention to Candace Owens. I personally think that he couldn't care less about Candace Owens, but he wants people to think that he does and that she likes him secret. And it's really creepy too, because as a Catholic, Candace Owens is married. So you're not supposed to have thoughts about married women like that. That's a sin. To try to spread that. And another thing about Nicholas Fuentes is he did not come from a traditional household. He was born from in vitro fertilization, IVF, which is something that women who delay having children, they want to have children at a late age, so they need IVF to get pregnant. So I didn't really research if his mother was an old mother when he was born, or maybe she had fertility issues that would require IVF. But I just thought that it's strange that he comes from that. And as a result, IVF often usually causes twins, just the way that the procedure works. It often has a side effect that twins are produced as a result. And he does have a twin sister from the IVF, his only sibling. And talking about his parents more, he took a lot of offense on Piers Morgan when Piers Morgan pretty much implied that Nick Fuentes probably comes from a racist household. And that's why he has the views that he does, because Nick willingly shared on his own show an anecdote about his father and how his father hates Applebee's and would never take the children to Applebee's as a family because he considers it to be for black people and that he's above that. His father is above eating where black people do. And Nick Fuentes, of course, dodged the question. He took personal offense at it being brought up. But I think that Piers Morgan had a point. And the reason I do is because after a show that was within the week that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, Nick Fuentes opened the show talking about Michael Savage's opinion. And Michael Savage is a Jewish far-right former radio host who was very popular on the radio for about 20 years. Yeah, he had 10 really big years from during the Obama years. He was especially popular, but I can see Nick Fuentes being a kid and his parents constantly playing Michael Savage. And I don't have any proof of this, but I think it's highly likely that he grew up listening to Michael Savage as a result of being around his parents playing it. So I can agree with Piers that he probably did come from a racist household, because why else would he talk about Michael Savage if he hates Jews so much? And Michael Savage is Jewish. I think there's a high likelihood he grew up listening to Michael Savage as a result of being exposed to him through his parents. And just more about his character. He's very rude to super chatters. And I just don't like that. And a lot of the things I think he's playing it up so people clip him crashing out against super chatters, as he says, but this is not the behavior of a good Christ-like person to attack people giving him money like that. I don't see him extolling any Christian values. What I do see, I see him glorifying thug culture with the rap music. He said something extremely cringe in one of his last shows of the year, 2025, about clavicular and how clavicular is the ultimate role model for white teens growing up, white boys, adolescent teens, because the only other example they had of before clavicular came was a black gang member with jeans below his underwear, and that represented being tough and being free. And now you have this white guy, clavicular, going crazy, saying insane things, acting like a thug, and now you have a white guy to emulate. So you should all support him and how he loves clavicular so much. And that just really disgusted me because it shows that you're not right wing. You don't appreciate Christian values because there's nothing Christian about what clavicular is doing. He's not a good role model. Just, it's awful. I've heard rumors about him, Nick Fuentes, that he also consumes cocaine. And I think it might be true because he's always so loud on the show. He screams the show from beginning to end, and I could see him snorting some cocaine before he starts to give him the energy he needs to conduct the show the way he does. And people say that pay attention to how much he sniffles, and it's a side effect of cocaine consumption. Well, I don't have proof of that either, but I do think that he's exhibiting signs of someone who consumes cocaine. And he also says he's constantly sick. He was at an event where he gets sick and he has to not do a show for days at a time. And I think what's going on is that he's participating in homosexual activity. He's going to gay parties and there's a lot of contact there, and that's why he keeps getting sick. But he's definitely not a person who's never had sex before. I think he has a lot of sex, and that's causes the constant illnesses that he seems to have. And let's talk a little more about him. Well, I do believe he is Mexican, and he keeps claiming to be white. He has this really cringe way of speaking where he'll talk about Italian people and he said, we Italians, and he'll talk about Irish and he'll say, we Irish, but you're not Irish or Italian. Your name is Nicholas Fuentes. You're Mexican, and that's what you are. And there's nothing wrong with being Mexican, but he really should acknowledge what he is and be realistic with himself. He does the same thing when talking about the American government, such as Trump's strategy in Latin America. He'll say, we need to secure Latin America, but he speaks as if he's the one making the decisions. He's the one in charge of the military. It's his military. It's his government. No, you're not you're not a ruler, you're not in power, you have no control. It's not we, and it doesn't matter that you're American. It's the American military, the American government. It's never we. And I just don't like anyone who takes that sport team approach to politics, because first of all, it's really low IQ, and you should recognize yourself as a citizen and as an individual, but it's not we. And I see that behavior online with hyper-nationalist Indians, Pakistanis, Chinese on the internet. We're taking over. We're the strong. No, there's no we in that situation. Just a pet peeve of mine. But to wrap this video up, I think that Democrats are promoting Nick Fuentes to make Republicans look completely insane, completely hateful, and just to try to undermine their chances of winning any more elections, because they want to associate Republicans and conservatives to the anchor that is Nick Fuentes, to drag them down and make sure that they don't get power again. And I think this is why the New York Times had a glamorizing article about Nick Fuentes. And all the New York Times is accomplishing by writing and publishing stories about this guy is to make him more popular, which I think is what the goal is. The Democrats want to spread Nick Fuentes so that Nick Fuentes drags down everyone to his level. And that's exactly what's happening. I hope people realize that and they stop listening to Nick Fuentes.